It all started less than 48 hours after I moved into my new home. Boxes were still sealed. My dog hadn't even picked his favorite patch of grass yet. I was standing in my driveway, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, admiring the sunrise and the silence, when I saw a group of 3 people in matching polos walking up the road. They weren't neighbors. They were a delegation. Clipboards, branded folders, expressions like someone just stole their parking spot at Target. "We're with the HOA," the lead woman announced. "Not introduced, announced, like a verdict." I blinked. "I'm not part of the HOA." She smiled, tight, smug, rehearsed. "Actually, your property falls under our covenant. We'll need you to sign these documents to bring your land into compliance, especially the fence, and the shed, and, well, we'll go over it all." That moment right there, that was the quiet before the war. Because here's what they didn't know. I'd already read the property survey. I'd already met with the county clerk. And the land they were claiming? Legally, undeniably mine. But they weren't interested in facts. They were interested in control. And what they did next went way beyond clipboard threats. This wasn't just about a fence. It became personal. Petty fines, false complaints, retaliation. But they picked the wrong person to mess with. Because I had something they didn't. Time, receipts, and a legal trap with their name all over it. And trust me, by the end of this, they were begging for mercy. The house was a dream I didn't think I'd ever afford. Tucked at the far edge of a sleepy cul-de-sac, surrounded by old oak trees, with just enough land to breathe. It wasn't massive, but it was mine. No shared walls. No upstairs stomping, just sky, silence, and freedom. At least, that's what I thought, until the HOA came knocking. Now, to clarify, I knew this neighborhood had an HOA. But my property? It was built 5 years before the HOA even existed, according to the deed, survey, and multiple county records. My land was not included in their jurisdiction. I wasn't part of their gated nonsense, and that bothered them more than I could have guessed. The woman leading the charge was named Cheryl, though the neighborhood just called her Karen behind her back. Tight ponytail, tennis visor, permanent squint, like the world owed her a refund. She wasn't alone. With her were Doug, her smug yes-man husband, and Lila, the HOA secretary who took notes like she was recording a court deposition. Their vibe, entitled, Artificially Sweet. The type that compliments your mailbox, while mentally calculating how fast they can make you paint it beige. Karen took one step onto my driveway like she owned it. "Just a formality," she said, holding out a packet. "We're incorporating your lot into the HOA this month. You'll get access to the clubhouse community events." "I'm good," I said, flat. That pause after my answer, I could feel the tension. Doug laughed, once short. "Well, we don't really give options on this." Karen smiled, like a knife. "It's more of a compliance issue now, especially with how your fence extends past the sightline. It violates uniformity." I looked at the fence. It was sturdy, legal, built by the previous owner with a permit. I'd already verified at the county office. "Right," I said. Slowly, "I'm still not signing." She took the paper back without a word, but her eyes said everything. This isn't over. And it wasn't. It started with a letter, no stamp. Just dropped in my mailbox like a threat wrapped in HOA. Letterhead. Notice of violation, it read. Issue. Unapproved fence installation. I laughed out loud. The fence had been there for 3 years. It predated their own bylaws. I called the HOA office expecting some rookie mistake. But the woman on the line, Monica, sounded eerily prepared. "Mr. Andrews, you're considered pending annexation. That means compliance is expected in anticipation of vote. Approval. I never agreed to be annexed." "Well, our board did." I hung up furious. That was the first strike. The second came the following morning, when I noticed a sticker on my trash can. Improper. Bin placement. 25 fine. They were watching, closely. At first, I thought it was just me. Then my neighbor across the street, Ben, stopped me one evening. He was a soft-spoken guy, mid-40s, worked from home like me. "We hadn't talked much before that. You new here?" he asked casually. "Moved in last week." He glanced around, then leaned in. "Just a heads up. Don't let them push you around. They tried this same annexation garbage on the Ramirez family 2 years ago. Got shut down in court. But it took 6 months of hell." I raised an eyebrow. "So I'm not crazy?" Ben smirked. "Nope. But you are now officially targeted. Welcome to the HOA's blacklist." We shared a chuckle. But I felt a cold chill settle in my chest, because the real fight hadn't even started. By week 3, I had received 4 violation notices, 2 unapproved landscaping demands, a warning for unauthorized political signage. It was a welcome flag. And then came the kicker, a formal letter titled, Notice of Mandatory Easement Transfer. They were demanding I relinquish a strip of land along the edge of my property, 4 feet wide, so they could extend uniform pathway access for community use. Translation: they wanted to chop off part of my yard for decorative sidewalk continuity. I laughed, then called my lawyer. Because now, it wasn't just annoying, it was war. The next few days felt like living under surveillance. HOA board members driving slowly past my house, several times a day. Random strangers walking their dogs on my private lawn. My mailbox door mysteriously ripped off. A formal complaint filed with animal control about my dog's barking. He barely makes a sound. But the real jaw-dropper came when a certified letter arrived from the county zoning board. Apparently someone had filed a request for forced HOA inclusion, claiming I had been negligent in civic responsibility. Guess who signed it? Karen. I sat at my kitchen table that night, papers spread out, anger boiling. That's when it hit me. They were trying to paper push me into submission, death by documentation. But I wasn't the kind of guy to roll over, and they'd underestimated one crucial thing. I had time, resources, and a background in real estate law. I wasn't just some clueless homeowner. I pulled out the property deed. I pulled up county annexation laws, and I started building a counterstrike, one that would use their own rules, to trap them in their arrogance. The very next day, I put up a sign on my lawn, private property, not part of HOA in big bold letters. 2 hours later, I caught Doug on my security cam pulling up in his golf cart, snapping photos of the sign. The gloves were off. And what happened next? Well, let's just say the board had no idea what I was about to unleash. They thought I was alone, but I wasn't. And when the truth came out, in public, in court, and in front of their own neighbors, it would be more than just embarrassing. It would be irreversible. This was the end of their little kingdom. And it all started with a fence. You'd think after a public sign, a property deed, and a not-so-subtle legal warning the HOA would back off. They didn't. They doubled down. It became clear this wasn't about rules. It was about power, control, and the fact that I said no. It started with something small. The garbage can mysteriously disappeared. I thought maybe it was a prank. I checked my cameras, caught blurry footage of someone in a hoodie, wheeling it away in the dead of night. Next day, I found it, halfway down the creek, busted open. Then the gate to my backyard was mysteriously left wide open, 3 days in a row. My dog nearly ran out to the road. I installed better locks, reinforced my fence, put up motion lights. That's when the anonymous complaints started rolling into the city. Unkempt lawn. My lawn was trimmed and mulched. Suspicious vehicle in driveway. My cousin's car during a visit. Running a home business without license. I was on Zoom calls. Apparently too often. Each complaint triggered a letter. Each letter meant paperwork and time. That's when I realized they weren't just trying to win. They were trying to wear me out. But they were forgetting something. I don't get tired. It was a Thursday when I came home and smelled gas. Not like a leak. Like fumes. From a generator. I followed the smell to my back fence. And there it was. Someone had poured used motor oil along the outer edge of my yard. A black slick trail. Toxic. Illegal. I called the fire department. They documented it. Took samples. Confirmed it was deliberate. The HOA denied any involvement. But I'd seen Doug's truck idling near my yard the day before. And a neighbor later sent me a blurry photo of him walking behind my fence with a jug. Coincidence? Sure. If you believe in unicorns too, the HOA dropped a bombshell 2 days later. A certified letter arrived with a final demand for payment in bold red font. They claimed I owed them $1, $2, and $75 in cumulative violation fees, and they were placing a lien on my property if I didn't pay within 15 days. The letter looked official, but I knew the law. They couldn't lien a property not under their governance. It was a bluff. A dangerous, illegal bluff. So I smiled, and sent them a letter of my own, CC'd to my lawyer, the city zoning board, and the local news tip line. That weekend, Ben, my neighbor, invited me over for a beer. You know they've done this before, right? He said. To 3 other families. You're just the first one pushing back this hard. I asked him if others would speak up. He hesitated. They're scared. The HOA fines people for ridiculous things, and everyone's afraid of property values dropping. So I had an idea. I printed out my full report. Violation letters, forged lien threats, photos, recordings, HOA documents, and quietly slipped copies into 15 mailboxes. Every document was backed with a legal note. By Monday morning, Cheryl, aka Karen, was red in the face at the clubhouse, waving around the packets like they were poison. And people? They were listening now. The following week, I got hit from every angle. 1. A formal cease and desist from the HOAs. Law firm claiming I was inciting community unrest. 2. A false police report claiming I had threatened Doug with a shovel while planting a tree. 3. An anonymous post on the neighborhood. forum calling me a hostile outsider, and a risk to family values. I kept every single document, printed them, time-stamped them, filed them. And here's the kicker. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. 2 neighbors who'd been quietly watching this unfold, a retired judge and a former HOA board member, reached out. They knew the game, and they wanted in. While Karen and her cronies raged in private, cracks started showing in public. HOA meeting attendance doubled. Most came just to hear my side. Someone made a parody Instagram account called Ho Horrors and posted photos of Karen measuring lawns with a ruler. A petition started circulating to investigate HOA misuse of power. And the best part? I found out their forced inclusion clause, the one they kept waving around, had expired 3 years ago. They'd been bluffing the whole time. All I had to do now was set the trap. One morning, I woke up to find a city inspector parked outside. He walked straight up to my porch, got a complaint about an illegal structure. On your property? He said, scanning his clipboard. I raised an eyebrow. What structure? He pointed to my shed, the same one that had been permitted and standing for years. I handed him a copy of the original permit. He looked confused. They said this was new. Who's they? I asked. He paused, looked at me, then deadpan. Guess. I knew then. I had them. Because filing a false zoning report? That's not just petty, that's criminal. I went inside, made a pot of coffee, and laid everything out on the table. False complaints, environmental violations, forged lien threats, harassment, tampering with mail, attempted easement fraud, HOA funds misuse. All documented, all organized, all legal time bombs. And in the middle of it, a letter, drafted by my lawyer, addressed to the state attorney general. Because this wasn't just a neighbor dispute anymore. This was organized harassment, and now, it was my move. There's a particular kind of silence that comes before a storm. Not fear, not hesitation, focus, and for the first time since this ridiculous saga began, I wasn't angry anymore, I was ready. Because while the HOA board was busy weaponizing newsletters and false citations, I had been quietly working behind the scenes, reading, recording, calling in favors, and what I'd uncovered wouldn't just shake the neighborhood, it would shatter the HOA. My lawyer and I filed an official cease and desist against the HOA, citing harassment, fraudulent lion threats, attempted annexation without due process, violation of state property boundary laws. We attached over 80 pages of documentation, complete with timestamps, security footage, and county records. Then we sent copies to the City Zoning Commission, the county clerk's office, the HOA's insurance provider, and the local news station's investigative reporter. The message was clear: back off or burn. But I wasn't done yet. Here's the thing about HOAs. They love rules, but hate audits. So I filed a public records request to review their financials. As a neighboring resident, even outside their jurisdiction, I was still allowed access to meeting minutes and budget reports. What I found? Let's just say, it didn't look good. Thousands spent on miscellaneous landscaping with no receipts. Personal reimbursements to board members for communication expenses. $4,200. Invoice labeled Community Defense Legal, which matched the timeline of their legal attack on me. That was your dues, neighbors. Karen and Doug had been using HOA money like it was their personal legal war chest. So I made copies and dropped them anonymously in 27 mailboxes. While they spiraled, I stayed quiet. No online rants, no angry confrontations. Just one very calculated move. I reserved the community clubhouse for a private meeting, used my name, paid the fee. Karen had no idea what it was for until the flyers started circulating. Know your rights when the HOA overreaches, a free legal Q&A for residents hosted by a licensed attorney, an independent real estate expert, Thursday, 6:30 p.m., Clubhouse Main Hall. Attendance? Standing room only. Karen stood frozen at the entrance, arms crossed, while over 40 neighbors listened to my attorney explain how HOA boards can be held personally liable for abuse of power. People took notes. Phones recorded everything. And when the topic of financial transparency came up, I handed out copies of the budget report. That was the beginning of the end. The next morning, I made a very visual change. Right at the edge of my property, where they had tried to claim a strip of my land for sidewalk uniformity, I installed a 3-foot decorative brick wall. Not just any wall. On the front face, etched in stone, private property, not under HOA jurisdiction. County Survey, Voitetsun 4B. Filed May 14, 2024. Underneath, a small legal QR code that linked to the official county map. Petty? Absolutely. But legal? Bulletproof. It was the final nail in the illusion they'd built. And the photo went viral on the neighborhood app. Reactions ranged from iconic to, why don't we all have one? The board starts to crack within a week. Doug resigned from the HOA board for personal reasons. Leela stopped showing up to meetings altogether. And Karen? She got a formal ethics complaint filed against her by 4 residents. Turns out, people were tired of her power trips. All they needed was someone to show them it could be beaten. I got calls, emails, muffin baskets even. People thanking me for standing up, but I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because someone had to call their bluff, and I had just one card left to play. The final move, public accountability. Remember that reporter I looped in? Turns out she had done her homework. She called me one afternoon and said, "Would you be okay going on camera?" I said yes. The segment aired the following: Tuesday night, when HOAs go too far. One man's fight against overreach. Drone shots of my house. Interview clips. Audio of Karen on a voicemail threatening legal action. The best part? The anchor held up the HOA's budget report live on air and said, "We reached out for comment. They declined." The fallout? Immediate. By the end of the week, a petition to dissolve the HOA board was circulating. A third-party firm was hired to audit the HOA's finances. And Karen's husband listed their house for sale. Guess they finally wanted out of the neighborhood they'd tried so hard to control. Closure. Almost a month later, things were quiet. Peaceful even. My yard? Flourishing. My mailbox? Untouched. My trash cans? Sitting proudly on the curb, exactly where I decided they belong. But one morning, as I watered the lawn, a new neighbor walked by. Young couple. Just moved in. He looked at my not part of HOA wall and chuckled. "You really built that?" "Yep." "Nice," he said. "They told us not to talk to you." I laughed. "They'll learn," I said. "Eventually." Because this wasn't just about one house. It was about telling bullies and polos that some of us read the fine print, and we fight back. I thought the war was over. Karen had gone quiet. The HOA was fractured, and the neighborhood finally breathing. But then, I got the letter. It wasn't from the HOA. It was from the State Attorney General's office. Subject line: Notice of investigation. Alleged HOA misconduct and financial irregularities. They were reaching out because of the documents I submitted weeks earlier. Turns out, I hadn't just exposed harassment. I had triggered a state-level probe. And what they uncovered? Put everything that came before to shame. The audit that broke the dam within 2 weeks. The state dispatched a certified forensic auditor to comb through the HOA's books. Emails were subpoenaed. Bank transfers investigated. What they found? Multiple payments to a consultant that turned out to be Karen's cousin. Over $6,000 spent on emergency landscaping. For Doug's backyard. Board members approving reimbursements without quorum votes. HOA funds used to hire a private investigator to follow me. Yeah, they spent community money to tail a guy whose only crime was not joining their club. That was the tipping point. The explosion goes public. The state released a public summary of their findings in a 14-page report. And guess who picked it up? The local news. Again, their headline? HOA funds misused to target homeowner who wasn't even a member. It aired at 6 p.m. Footage of Karen ducking into her car. A lawyer describing misuse of nonprofit funds as potentially criminal. Neighbors openly criticizing the board on camera. The news segment ended with a quote from the auditor. This HOA may face civil penalties, or worse. The next HOA meeting? Packed. I didn't even need to speak. The crowd handled it. One resident demanded Karen be removed. Another asked if dues would be refunded. A third read from the state report out loud. Slowly, clearly, so everyone could hear. Karen tried to control the room. Tried to talk over people. But the crowd wasn't having it. And then, the final blow landed. Ben, the neighbor who first warned me, stood up, holding a yellow envelope. "I contacted a lawyer," he said. "And several of us are filing a class action lawsuit." Gasps. Karen froze. Doug looked like he'd seen a ghost. Someone clapped. Then another. Then the whole room erupted. The board adjourned the meeting. In silence. A week later, 3 things happened. Karen was removed from the board by emergency vote. The HOA's bank account was temporarily frozen by court order. The entire board was forced to resign pending investigation. And the cherry on top? The county sent a letter to all residents. Effective immediately. Voluntary participation is suspended. No dues are required. HOA operations are paused pending resolution. The entire empire collapsed. Now, I could have walked away. I had what I wanted. Peace, justice, and poetic satisfaction. But I wasn't done. Because I had one last piece of real estate to develop. In Karen's memory, I bought a custom yard flag. Simple, elegant, white letters on a navy. Background, not today. Karen underneath, the scales of justice. I placed it right next to the brick wall. Lit it at night. Within 24 hours, Someone posted a photo on the neighborhood app. The legend lives on. Month later, the news station called me back. We're doing a follow-up special. They said, "You're kind of a local hero." I laughed. They invited me back for a sit-down interview. They asked, "What do you want people to learn from all this?" I said, "Read your property deeds. Know your rights. And when people weaponize power, don't run. Document everything and push back harder." Then they played side-by-side footage. Karen's first HOA speech, smug and proud, and a photo of my yard, post-victory, flag waving, sun shining. Cue the dramatic music. In the end, it was never about fences, or signs, or trash cans. It was about standing up to people who believe rules are tools for control, not community. Karen and her crew built their little kingdom on intimidation, but they forgot one thing. Bullies hate sunlight, and when you shine it long enough, they melt. It's funny how the quiet feels different after a war. Same trees, same street, same sun casting long shadows across my driveway. But now, no more secret fines. No more drive-by stares. No more notes shoved into my mailbox by people too afraid to sign their names. Just peace. And truth be told, it feels earned. Because what started as a ridiculous demand for compliance turned into a full-blown lesson. In courage, in clarity, and in the power of saying no. You always hear the same advice when it comes to conflict. Keep your head down. Don't stir the pot, let it go. But here's what they don't tell you. Sometimes, the pot needs to be stirred, especially when it's filled with lies, fear, and a few clipboard tyrants trying to cook you with your own silence. Didn't fight the HOA because I wanted drama. Fought because it wasn't just me. I looked around and saw families too scared to speak. People paying dues out of fear. Elderly neighbors fined for having flower pots in the wrong color. That's not community. That's extortion, wearing a polo shirt and a fake smile. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So here's what I want you to remember. Bullies love bylaws until someone reads them better. A couple of weeks ago, I saw a for sale sign pop up 2 streets over. It was Karen's house. Word is they moved to a no HOA neighborhood. Irony? Delicious. A few of us got together and had a little BBQ that weekend. Ben brought beer. Somebody made cupcakes with little edible signs that read, "Not today, Karen." We didn't talk about the war. We just lived, free, together, and a little stronger. That's the part I didn't expect. The fight brought people closer, and the silence that followed? It was no longer fear. It was relief. So now, when I stand at my porch, coffee in hand, dog by my side, I still see that little wall I built, that simple message. Etched in stone, private property, not part of the HOA. But to me, it means a lot more. Now, it means you don't have to fold. It means you don't have to be silent. It means there's always a way. Even when the odds feel stacked, you just have to be willing to dig a document. And when the moment's right, strike back, legally, publicly, and without flinching. If you made it this far, I've got 2 questions for you. What would you have done if an HOA tried this on you? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you think justice was served, drop a comment below that says, "Not today, Karen." Let's make sure this video finds everyone dealing with HOA nightmares, because they need to know they're not alone, and bullies hate the internet. If you're paying close attention, yes, the QR code I mentioned, it's real. I linked it in the video description. Go ahead, scan it. And if this story reminded you of your own HOA nightmare, subscribe, because I've got 2 more stories you won't believe. Let's just say, they picked the wrong neighbor again. Laws are meant to protect the people, not the powerful, and sometimes the most peaceful homes are defended with the sharpest minds.